Thanks. Hello, everybody. Great to be here, and thank you for Canaccord for inviting us back. I think this is our second time up here, and seen a number of you from prior meetings, and some are new. So there's something old and something new, but hopefully it'll be a good idea to give us an overview of the company. So I thought before we say where we're going, it's a little bit to say where we came from. And this is an amazing company. I've been on the board for 10 years now, as running another company. Just joined as CEO back last year. And this was founded by a team of sports medicine experts, engineers, product developers out in Israel, amazing innovation. And it was at this, the AAOS meeting about 11 years ago. They had just sold their prior company. And they asked all their surgeon friends, of which they have many. They said, what's the problem what's the unsolved problem in sports medicine? And all the surgeons said, we got to repair the meniscus instead of removing it, and we need a better way to repair it. And so with that, they set off for the challenge, and they saw the future. So for those of you who like the great Wayne Gretzky analyses, you got to skate where the puck is going to be. And I can tell you that these founders knew where the puck was going to be, and we'll see the data is trending. That meniscus repair is the next frontier. Proud to have inherited a really solid foundation. Set up operations, many of the regulatory intellectual property milestones are behind us, the testing behind us, the data is behind us. And actually now we're pleased to say we have over 5,000 cases worldwide, and so the patients are doing very, very well. And so as we look forward into what are we doing in 2025, it's a pivotal year for growth and expansion, and that's what our team is going to be focused on. And we're executing on, we have a broader vision, which is innovation and joint preservation. When you can address these critical soft tissue structures, such as meniscus and such as rotator cuff repair that was just so eloquently discussed at the prior talk, it's really about saving the joint and delaying that joint replacement, and we're proud to be a part of that. So we'll talk about our initial indication. It's meniscus surgery. So this is an amazing amount of volume in meniscus surgery. Over 2 million global surgeries done a year, and that number is probably understated. And over half of these are done in the United States. But historically, over 75% of these meniscus surgeries are actually meniscectomies, partial or total, where you remove some or all of the meniscus. Now, the problem with that is you have a 3 times greater incidence of leading to a total joint replacement. That's my data. Some of the other data has over 100 times in certain patient populations. So you're really causing a problem or developing a problem by having a meniscectomy. So there's a clinical trend to save the meniscus. There's some other companies out there that have certainly been promoted that. We totally support that. And it's our mission to preserve these joints and improve patients' lives. So we'll talk about numbers here a bit. The meniscus market, repair market, is projected to be quite huge, upwards of $1 billion over the next several years by various market estimates. And the reason for that range and the shift is really there's 3 things that are happening. The first is clinical evidence. There used to be a belief that meniscectomies were fine. The data is coming out that they're not fine, and that's being not just talked about by us, but by other companies and by the surgeons at the podium. There's also used to be a belief that, when you repair the meniscus, it doesn't really heal, especially in older patients or avascular ranges. The data is coming out that, in fact, either they do heal, or even if you're just reconstructing the joint, you're reconstructing the anatomy and you're buying time. So it's positive clinically to repair the meniscus. Health economically, it costs a lot more money to do a meniscectomy over time because of that secula of the joint replacements. And then finally, industry is behind it. Smith & Nephew was probably early with there. There's other companies that have been innovating and saying we've got to save the meniscus. So it really is a community of the companies and the surgeons all getting behind this shift from a minority of 20-25% of the meniscus tears being repaired to what we hope and see as being a majority over time. So if it's such a good idea, what's holding us back? Well, there's some challenges that do remain in meniscus repair, and this was what was talked about 10 years ago by our initial surgeon advisors. There's data out there that anywhere between 12 and 30% of intraoperative procedures have complications. This is what the data says, but we're also hearing anecdotally, our sales reps, our surgeons saying, 1 out of 3 times with this product, I have a challenge, it misfires, etc. That's what's called deployment failure. It's hard to tension it properly and get that, and you have to maybe put in another implant, or sometimes those implants, and actually often they pull out during the surgery. Post-operatively, there's also some challenges, whether it be some of these devices require knot tying in the joint, and you end up with a proud knot in the joint, which is not ideal. When the PEEK implants or the plastic implants migrate, they pull through or they get up on the wrong side of the joint, that's a problem. You can end up some crepitus and perhaps cartilage damage. And then all of the implants have a very small high-strength suture that are connecting the two fixation points, and that can cause some cheese wiring and fixation damage, especially if you're really trying to get some good tension on this. So our company has solved all of those issues. Our device is there on the top left. You can see the single-use disposable device, and then the inset there is what the actual implant looks like. So it's all suture. There's no PEEK. These are soft suture bundles. The connecting apparatus between the two suture bundles is a proprietary mesh, which lays flat and distributes the load and doesn't cheese wire. There's no need to tie a joint. That little green string there on the bottom, that's an actuating suture. You just pull it, and it creates what's called a super ball, the name of the device, and it locks up the device. And probably underappreciated, but now is becoming very important for us, is this anatomic tensioning and reduction. So there's a core in meniscus surgery, a core philosophy that inside out is generally the gold standard, more difficult to do. You've got some neurovascular structures you got to worry about, but at least you're tensioning from the proper direction. We've achieved that with an all-inside product. It's the only device on the market that does that, and we'll talk about why that's important. So first, I'll just give you a quick overview of the procedure. It's what I call a very simple 3-step process, and very similar to how surgeons are doing it today. So you go in arthroscopically, you deploy the first suture bundle on one side of the tear, you pull it out and you deploy a second suture bundle, and then with the same trigger and the same result, you reduce it, and then you deploy what's called a super ball and lock it. So it's pretty straightforward. One of our initiatives for the year is to invest heavily in surgeon and rep education, because this is slightly different, and it's importantly different than every other device on the market of how this is done. So sometimes with orthopedic surgeon, you got to retrain the muscle memory, and that's what we're doing. Once we get through that, we find it's a very effective technique. And this is why it is important. So every other implant device on the market, when you deploy that second implant, you pull your device out and then you pull on a suture to tension it. Kind of makes sense, except for the fact that when it pulls right back through that hole you just created, or it displaces the meniscus from where you've tried to put it, and I'll get to why that's important. So this is the number one problem that our surgeons have told us is the implant just pulls right out. In fact, I was at the Carlsbad Fellows course the other day, and we had a lot of newly minted, actually well-trained fellows, and we saw it happen with a number of devices, and yeah, those things pull out. The problem is now what do you do? So now you've got a PEEK implant on the wrong side of the joint. It just takes a lot longer. You've created another hole, and it's very complicated. So with our device, you don't pull out the needle. It's got an integrated knot pusher, and you're pulling that trigger, and you're tensioning in a very controlled manner without putting any stress on the meniscus or pulling anything right back through the implant you just created. And so we see in our data, there's a study recently published last year that shows a very low complication rate. We know from our post-market surveillance, our complication rate is very low. And this is the magic of all those benefits, or the features. You get this benefit of a very high reproducible and controllable repair. So we're excited about our device. We're excited about where the market is going. And we just want to talk a little bit. I've been fortunate enough to be a part of a number of orthopedic companies that have innovated. And what we're seeing is what I've seen in total shoulder, in total ankle, and some of these other in biologics, that the market is now starting to get excited. The surgeons are getting excited. So they're coming up with novel implant techniques, not just with our device, with all the devices. So what I really like talking about this, the hashtag repair, right? Self-reinforced rip stops for certain tears. But they're thinking about it. Biologic augmentation. They're looking at bringing different biologic with microfracture, bringing stills in. Earlier, you might have seen another company, Mayak, present. They're doing a study of using that in the meniscus at the same facility that we are. We're just in working with that as well. And what surgeons have said is, your mesh actually can be a carrier. And I'm going to start putting in some of these biologics into your mesh. You can't really do that with a high-strength suture. And then over in Europe, you may have seen this published grafting technologies. They're taking collagen grafts or these other grafts, and they're wrapping the meniscus. Why? Well, they're going after non-acute, complex meniscus tears that don't heal unless you do this. And their study shows in that patient population, which is a horrible failure rate, they had 85% success. Now, it's very difficult to do, and we've done some labs where if we can use our device, very unique, you leave the graft in place, you're not yanking on it. Our device helps enable that in a more easy, or excuse me, in an easier way. So this is just saying that the market is innovating. We're excited to be behind it. The other thing that's kind of new, and this is new for this talk, is I spoke with some of our surgeon advisors, I spoke with our marketing team, and I just asked them, well, how are they using the device differently than the other devices? What are our surgeons telling us? And this is also reinforced by some surgeries and some labs I've been at, is one of the really interesting aspects is meniscus transplant as well as segmental replacement. So we know that there's allograft companies out here that are very focused on meniscus transplants, which can be the right indication for certain indications. There's a new company that now has, or several companies that have collagen implants. But the reason they're using our device and they like it is because they said it's just so reliable. I've got this several $1,000 meniscus graft. I don't want to put 17 holes in this because I know 5 of them aren't going to work right. And again, in this lab, the fellow said, boy, that was easy. So that high reliability, that high confidence. Another feature I didn't even realize is we have a very rigid needle. And what the surgeons are saying is, with some of these other devices, I go in, I don't feel good trying to reach the other side or trying to really bend this because it's going to bend, it's going to tweak, it fails. Ours is, because of the construct, it's actually three different layers within that needle. It's very strong. And the important thing is that controlled tensioning I mentioned that mimics that inside-out technique. So if you've done all that work, and for those of you who've been in meniscus transplant procedures, you're putting a groove in, you're doing all this bone preparation, you're taking this very expensive implant out, you're putting it precisely the right place. There's data that suggests if you're a millimeter or 2 off, you've ruined that meniscus repair. Now if you put an implant in and try to fixate it peripherally and you're pulling on it because you're trying to tension, you've just shifted all of that. So this high level of confidence are what surgeons are saying. Root repair enhancement. So ours is not necessarily indicated for root repair. There's other companies that do a great job of repairing the root, but there's new procedures that are looking to place a centralized fixation to stabilize. Again, it's that same thing. You might have repaired the root, but that meniscus has to stay in the right place, and while it heals, you have to offload it. So this is a particular illustration of a published procedure, but not ours. But surgeons are saying, because of your high reliability, because it's all suture, and because you're not yanking, because we have this controlled tensioning, you're not yanking the meniscus away, I can use your device for root repair to stabilize it. Horizontal cleavage tear is another device that, there's another company that I think Smith & Nephew has, and they can do, it's a completely different construct, but it's that same idea. Is if you have a flat mesh, you're not going to cheese wire. So surgeons feel confident of getting some circumferential compression and again, controlled tensioning, and you're not going to cut right through this delicate procedure. And then finally, the surgeons are saying the economics are better because of 2 reasons. First of all, it's just math. If it takes us 3 implants to get in 3 successful deployed implants, and other products, it may take 4 implants to get 3 implants in. And sometimes they comp them, sometimes they don't. But the surgery center can save 10, 20, 30% right off the bat. The other aspect, which is kind of new news to us, we didn't really understand, but they said because of your controlled placement, because of this tensioning, we actually have to use fewer implants. We can get the repair desired without having to put 5, 6, 7 implants in. And they said, actually it's saving me money, it's better for the patient, I'm putting less holes in the meniscus. So A lot of kind of new data that's coming out. This is all anecdotal at this point, which we think is great, and it gives us another story to talk about these excellent features that were invented and just, discovered many years ago. These are now having real world clinical applications. So what are we doing about growth? This is our challenge in 2025, and we have a 3-point plan. First is U.S. sales. That's our number one focus, and we're looking to, it's a modest goal, but not an easy goal because there's a lot of good competitors out there, but we're looking to achieve 3 to 5% of the market within our U.S. plan, a 3-point strategy. The first is engage with our distributors, get the right distributors, the right motivation, and the right level of support. The second, kind of tied to the first, is medical education. We got to change the muscle memory of the surgeons that we're working with, number one. And there's a lot of adjunctive procedures like this lab we did with meniscus replacement. Very good way to kind of teach the other surgeons, and here's a novel way and a novel technique. And then finally, rep training. We've rolled out a rep certification program that our marketing team has put together. It's excellent. I passed, but it was difficult. It was a good hour online. Then we're going to have an in-person cadaver or simulated cadaver lab, because what we want is confident and competent reps lead to confident and confident surgeons and a good experience, and that's what we're focused on. Internationally, we've had the CE mark for quite some time. In fact, we're getting we're under the MDD. We're getting our MDR here very shortly. But we're not in a lot of European countries right now. We just haven't focused on it. So we have we've done all the hard work of planting. Now it's time to harvest some of those benefits from the CE mark. And then finally, some of you may have seen just about a week ago, we did a press release, announcing our 510K for rotator cuff applications. We'll talk about that. So we hope to get into LUR in the second, later this half, and then launch in the second half. So I thought I'd just give you again some of the new information, what we've been doing in terms of distribution. So in the US, we work with 20 independent distributors. About 60% of them are new, I would say, in the last 6 months, and I would say the vast majority are new in the last 2 to 3 months. So we went through quite a bit of soul-searching discussions, et cetera, of which distributors believe in this, have the right access, and what is not the right group. So really happy about the groups. We've had some all distributor calls. They're excited about it. We've just launched a brand new set of 6 different incentives and programs to help them. So they're motivated. They've got the tools in place, and now we have to just connect the dots of getting the training and supporting them out in the field. So really is a pivotal year for the U.S. as we go through some reorganization in the United States. Latin America has historically been where most of our cases and revenue has come from. About 7 countries there in Latin America. Big missing one here is Brazil, where we're in some early discussions with. Very loyal customers, continue steady Eddie adoption, and we're happy to support them as well. EMEA, so we're in a few countries, including Israel, the home country. And we have significant potential with our CE mark. Again, we're just started. We just signed a few contracts, some as early as yesterday. So we're getting going in Europe. And then Asia is interesting. We had some early sales in New Zealand. Got a great distributor in Taiwan. I think we're close to number 1 in market share in Taiwan. It's just amazing what this distributor's been able to do. And then just this week, we just signed a new agreement in Japan to expand into Japan. It's going to take about 18 months to get through the hurdles there. We are very well, we've done our homework of what we need to do. So that'll be a good kind of a medium-term driver for us. So really focused on, again, 2025 as being a pivotal year to grow sales globally. And then the third point of our plan is our new indication. So a lot of last talk and other talks have been discussing the challenges with the rotator cuff. So these are probably conservative. There's a paper I'm cited of 20 to 40% re-tear rates in patients over 50. I've seen data that, again, is much higher than that. And as you've seen, the clinical trend is to augment the rotator cuff with grafts. And our technology actually brought to us by the surgeon saying, this actually could work really well in rotator cuff to secure the medial side. Before leaping into this, we wanted to do some research saying, well, is this even our market? Is this going to be distracting? And we've got some really good granular data. We went through it, and 81% of the volume of rotator cuff surgeries in the United States are done by the exact same surgeons that do meniscus repairs. So we think this is a great channel synergy for us, and we'll talk a little bit about it. So there's kind of an illustration on the top right where you have our super ball going in and creating these small stitches on the medial side. Now, this just makes it very easy. You know, graphs are a really good idea. The data is showing this. It just makes a lot of intuitive sense. But it is still very limited. You know, part of it is economics, but a big part of it is the surgical technique. It's very difficult. Now, and part of it is getting into the medial side. So we've come up with a solution. We've tested in the lab. It works fantastic. We've tried it with pretty much all the grafts on the market, even the ones that have kind of the fancy deployment mechanisms. The surgeon said, I don't need this. I can, this goes through so easily that I can just shuttle it through, and this is a great solution. It goes through dermis. It goes through some of these tougher biologic or biosynthetic grafts, and the surgeons think this is a game changer for getting the graft in. It alleviates the need for staples. So with these polymer staples, a lot of them bioabsorbable, I think it's a good solution and it's a good idea for the medial side, but it can pose some risk of foreign body damage, especially if they break. So again, we're going with this philosophy of soft sutures, a mesh, no cheese wiring. You're really giving a minimal harm with maximum benefit with this procedure. It's really just the same device, different tip as you can see, and a slightly shorter implant. And what's nice is our indication is not just for grafts, it's broadly for rotator cuff. So we're going to be working during our LUR to look at areas like margin convergence, side to side, lots of other areas where we can enhance rotator cuff where you need a simple flat mesh to go into the rotator cuff. We plan to start our limited user release this half and then get into a full launch later in the year. And then finally, just since this is a financial conference, we are in a Series A. We just did our first close. Verana Capital is our lead investor. We've been supported by Trendlines, which is an Israeli incubator that has been with us from the start. They've been fantastic. And then Consensus Business Group out of the UK have also been fantastic. And then happy to talk to anybody offline about the fundraise. And that's where we're going. So you can contact me if you'd like. Hopefully that QR code works. And that's it. So thank you very much for your time.